My wife cheated with my best friend, then secretly transferred $200, $0 of our joint savings to his account before claiming it was loan repayment. Now they're both missing. And I just found out she's been planning to keep everything in a brutal legal battle over our house and inheritance. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing about how my wife, Lisa, cheated on me with my best friend, Mike. It all started with a gut feeling, like that nagging suspicion that maybe, just maybe, I was blind to what was really going on right under my nose. But I'll tell you, nothing prepares you for the kind of bombshell that hits when you stumble across the truth. And that's exactly what happened to me. One night I was going through the bank statements, something I'd never done before, and I noticed a strange transfer. $200,000, gone from our joint savings account, transferred to some account I didn't recognize. I thought it was a mistake at first, maybe a typo, but then I saw the date and the details. Loan repayment, she called it. Lisa is the kind of woman who's always been charming, bitchy when she doesn't get her way, and extremely manipulative. She's got this way of lying with a straight face that's almost impressive. I didn't think she'd do something like this, especially not with my best friend, Mike. But the signs were there, little things I brushed off. Late nights that turned into mornings, secret phone calls, her suddenly being busy at work even though she's a real estate agent and always had flexible hours. I'd ask her about it and she'd wave me off with some snippy comment about how I was paranoid or jealous. But I knew something was off. One day I decided to check her phone just out of curiosity. I'd been feeling like I was losing her anyway, and that's when I saw the texts. They were explicit, full of sexual innuendos, plans to meet up, and of course her calling Mike the best lover she ever had. I couldn't believe it. My stomach dropped. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. It wasn't just a fling, it was something serious, something she'd been hiding from me for months. The worst part, she was lying right to my face every time. I asked if she was cheating. She'd get bitchy, tell me I was overreacting, accuse me of being insecure or paranoid, and I believed her. Or at least I wanted to. That night I confronted her. I showed her the bank statement, the messages, everything. Her reaction was instant. She scoffed, rolled her eyes, and called me crazy, saying I was imagining things. She claimed it was just a loan to Mike because he was in a tough spot financially. She said she was just trying to help him out, that I was overreacting, that I had no proof of anything else. But I knew better. I could see the guilt in her eyes. It was a look I'd never seen before. She was lying and she knew it. I felt like the ground was shifting beneath my feet. I'd trusted her for so long, 15 years, only to find out she'd been screwing my best friend and stealing from me behind my back. The emotional impact hit me hard. I was furious, betrayed, humiliated. How could she do this? To me, to our family. I kept replaying the moments when she'd dismissed my concerns, when she'd made me feel like I was crazy. The pain was unbearable. And then came the shock. I found out that she, Lisa, had been secretly planning to keep everything, our house, the inheritance, everything we'd worked for by legal means. She'd been talking about how she'd fight for her rights, how she'd drag me through court if she had to, just to get her hands on everything. All the while, she was secretly transferring money to Mike, planning her escape and lying through her teeth. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. I thought I knew her. I thought she loved me, but apparently I was just a fool to her. I felt like a damn idiot for trusting her for so long. And now I was stuck in this nightmare where everything I built, our life, our savings, our future, was suddenly at risk because of her greed and her betrayal. I knew I had to do something, but I wasn't sure what. All I knew was that I wasn't going to let her walk away with everything, not without a fight. The next steps were clear. I needed to find out exactly how deep her plans went, and I had to prepare for the chaos that was coming. After I uncovered all of this, her lies, the money transfer, the texts, I couldn't sleep. My mind was racing, trying to connect the dots, trying to figure out what her endgame was. I knew she was planning something bigger, something she hadn't revealed yet. She was always good at hiding her true intentions, but now I saw the cracks in her story. The way she dismissed my questions, the way she got defensive over simple inquiries about our finances. It was all a mask. The next morning, I decided I had to get some clarity. I started digging into her phone, her emails, her social media, anything I could find. I wanted to know exactly what her plans were, how far she was willing to go. That's when I found the emails. She'd been talking to a lawyer, discussing how to shield her assets, how to claim that the money transfer was a loan and that I had no claim to it. I also discovered she'd been secretly planning to move out of the house, maybe even leave the country if she could. She'd been talking about how I was holding her back, how she deserved to be free from this useless marriage. I'd never been so angry in my life. The woman I loved, the woman I trusted with everything, was scheming behind my back, planning to take everything I thought was ours. And Mike, he was nowhere to be found. I checked his bank accounts, his phone logs, everything. No activity in the last few days. I also learned from some mutual friends that they'd both been disappearing, sneaking around, meeting secretly. It was like I was living in some bad movie. The betrayal sank deeper with each discovery. I knew I had to confront her again, but this time I had to be smart. I didn't want her to have any chance to spin her lies. I decided to set a trap. I told her I'd found out about her plans and that I wasn't going to let her walk away with my money or my house. I told her I wanted to talk, really talk, about what she was doing. She played it cool at first, acting like she was the victim, crying about how I didn't understand her, how she was just trying to help Mike, how she was under a lot of stress. She even said she loved me in her bitchy way, trying to manipulate me into backing down, but I wasn't buying it anymore. When she came home that evening, I had everything laid out: screenshots, bank statements, her emails. I watched her face change as she realized I knew everything. She tried to deny it, to spin some bullshit about how I was overreacting, how I was jealous. But her tone was different now. There was a flicker of panic, a hint of guilt. I could see her eyes darting around, trying to come up with another lie. I told her I knew about the transfer, about her plans to leave, about the legal stuff she'd been talking to her lawyer. Her face flushed, and she snapped at me, calling me paranoid, accusing me of ruining her life. It was a tense standoff. I felt so betrayed, so hurt, but I also knew I couldn't let her keep gaslighting me. I told her she needed to come clean, that I wasn't going to let her take everything: our house, our savings, our future. I made it clear I wasn't going to be a patsy for her schemes. That's when she finally broke down and started crying, but it was fake tears. I could see right through her. She kept insisting she loved me, that she was just trying to help Mike because he was in trouble, and that the money transfer was just a loan, nothing more. Yeah, right. I'd heard enough lies to last a lifetime. The emotional toll was crushing. I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. All those years, all the plans we made, the trust I'd given her, wiped out in a matter of days. I was furious, heartbroken, and confused all at once. I'd never thought she was capable of this level of betrayal, especially not with someone I called my best friend. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I was so blind to her manipulations. But the truth was, I was too comfortable, too trusting. And now I was paying the price. That night I sat alone in the living room, staring at the pile of evidence I'd collected. I knew I had to act fast. I couldn't let her get away with this, not without a fight. I was already planning my next move, consulting a lawyer, gathering financial records, and preparing for whatever legal battle was coming. I also started reaching out to a few close friends for support, people I could trust to tell the truth. The whole situation was a mess, but I knew one thing for sure: I wasn't going to be the victim here. I was done being played. The betrayal had cut deep, but I was going to fight for what was rightfully mine. The more I dug into her plans, the more I realized how deep her deception went. Lisa had always been good at hiding her true nature behind a pretty face and a sharp tongue, but now her mask was slipping fast. I started to see the full picture. She'd been secretly talking to lawyers, planning her escape, and somehow she thought she could just walk away with everything. That's when I decided I had to act quickly, before she could do any more damage. I contacted a lawyer the next morning. I needed to know my rights, what I could do legally to stop her from transferring anything else or hiding assets. The lawyer, a guy named Mark, was straightforward. He told me that if I could prove the money transfer was Not a loan, but a theft. I had a strong case to freeze any further transfers. He also warned me to be careful. Lisa was obviously planning something, and I should document everything. I started to compile a detailed timeline of her activities, her calls, her emails, her financial transactions. I was determined not to let her get away with this. Meanwhile, Lisa was acting even more bitchy and defensive. She kept trying to gaslight me, calling me paranoid and accusing me of ruining her life. She claimed she was just trying to help Mike, that he was in real trouble and she was the only one who could help him. She insisted she was innocent, that she'd never cheat on me, that the money transfer was just a loan she was going to get back. But I knew better. I had the proof, and I wasn't about to let her spin her way out of this mess. One night I caught her trying to access our joint account again. Her phone buzzed with a message from her lawyer and she quickly tried to hide it. I saw the message preview, something about next steps and asset protection. That was the final straw. I pulled her aside and told her I knew everything. I said I wasn't going to let her screw me over, not after all these years. She got furious, yelling that I was just trying to control her, that I didn't understand her, that I was insecure. But I wasn't listening anymore. I told her she had to come clean or I'd take legal action. The emotional was brutal. I felt betrayed, angry, and helpless all at once. I'd trusted her with my life, and now I found out she'd been secretly planning her escape, stealing from us, lying to my face. It was like waking up in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. The worst part, she kept insisting she loved me, that she'd never cheat, that I was overreacting. But her actions told a different story. She was planning to leave everything behind, and I was just a pawn in her game. I started thinking about what I needed to do to protect myself. I contacted my bank, froze our joint accounts, and requested a detailed statement of all recent transactions. I also contacted a private investigator I knew from work, just to see if I could gather more evidence on her whereabouts and her plans. I wasn't going to let her disappear with my money and our house. I also reached out to a few trusted friends for advice. Some told me to get a divorce immediately. Others suggested I fight for full custody of the house and the inheritance. I didn't know what was coming next, but I knew I had to be prepared for a long, brutal legal battle. Meanwhile, Lisa kept up her act, crying about how she loved me and how she'd never do anything to hurt me. She said she was just trying to help Mike because he was in trouble, that she'd never cheat on me. But her words felt hollow. I could see the lies in her eyes. The more I saw her, the more I realized this was a woman who'd do anything to get what she wanted: money, freedom, maybe even to leave the country if she could. I was furious at her for betraying me, but I was also scared. What if she managed to hide everything? What if I lost everything I'd worked for? That's when I decided I'd better get ready for the worst. I started gathering all the proof I could: texts, bank statements, emails, anything that could help me in court. I also started to think about how I could protect myself legally. I didn't want her to get away with stealing our savings or our house. I knew I had to act fast. The next few days were going to be a fight, and I was determined not to lose. I was angry, yes, but I was also determined to stand my ground. I was going to fight for what was mine, even if it meant going to war with my own wife. The days that followed were a blur of planning and panic. I couldn't believe how quickly everything unraveled. Lisa's bitchy attitude turned into outright hostility whenever I confronted her, but I wasn't backing down. I knew she was desperate to cover her tracks, and I had to be smarter than her. I kept digging, calling my lawyer daily, and pushing for immediate legal action to freeze any further transfers or asset movements. Mark, my lawyer, warned me that Lisa was probably trying to hide or even transfer assets offshore, any move to make herself untouchable. Meanwhile, I started to realize the extent of her planning. She'd been talking to a lawyer, probably the same one she'd been secretly consulting, about how to claim the house and inheritance, how to spin the story that I was controlling and abusive. She'd even drafted some fake documents I found, trying to justify her actions. The more I uncovered, the angrier I got. I felt like I was fighting against a master manipulator, someone who had been lying to me for years. It was like suddenly seeing her for who she really was: cold, calculating, and willing to do anything to get what she wanted. One night, I caught her sneaking around the house with her phone in her hand, typing furiously. I knew she was probably communicating with her lawyer or Mike, trying to plan her next move. I decided I had to confront her directly. I called her out, told her I knew about her plans, her lies, and her attempts to hide everything. That's when she snapped. She started yelling, calling me paranoid, accusing me of controlling her, of not trusting her. I told her I'd had enough, that I knew about the transfer, about her scheming, and that I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Her reaction was classic. She got bitchy, tears streaming down her face, but it was fake. I could see the desperation in her eyes. She kept saying she loved me, that she'd never cheat, that she was just trying to help Mike. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I knew she was lying. She'd been planning her escape for months, maybe longer. She'd been secretly transferring money, talking to lawyers, plotting how to keep everything for herself, all while pretending to be the loving wife. I decided I had to do something more concrete. I contacted a forensic accountant to help trace every cent of that $200 transfer. I wanted to be sure she hadn't moved more money or assets elsewhere. I also started preparing for a court order to freeze her assets and prevent her from leaving the country with anything. It was a long shot, but I had to try. I was furious. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about betrayal, trust, and my future. I'd been played for a fool, and I was hell-bent on fighting back. As I gathered evidence and made calls, Lisa's attitude only worsened. She became more defensive, more hostile. She'd scream at me, call me names, accuse me of trying to control her life. But I was done listening to her lies. I knew she'd do anything to keep her secrets hidden. Every time she tried to gaslight me, I would remind her that I had the proof, screenshots, bank statements, emails, and that I wasn't going to let her get away with this. I was prepared for a legal battle, and I wasn't going to go down without a fight. The emotional toll was overwhelming. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and angry. This woman I'd loved, who I'd trusted with everything, had been secretly planning her escape, stealing from me and lying through her teeth. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I was so blind to her manipulations. But deep down, I knew the truth. I'd been a fool to believe she was the woman I thought I knew. Now I had to pick up the pieces and figure out how to protect what was left: my house, my inheritance, my dignity. I couldn't let her walk away with everything we'd built, not without a fight. The legal process started moving faster than I expected. My lawyer, Mark, managed to get a temporary injunction to freeze the assets. At least the parts I could prove were directly linked to the suspicious transfer. That was a relief, but I knew it was just the beginning. Lisa was still trying to hide her tracks. Every day, I felt like I was one step behind her schemes. She'd gone from being bitchy and manipulative to outright hostile. She'd scream at me, call me paranoid, accuse me of trying to control her life, but I didn't care anymore. I had enough evidence to show she was planning her escape, and I was determined to stop her. One night, I caught her trying to access her lawyer's email on her phone. Her hand was trembling as she typed, probably trying to delete or alter some messages. I took her phone, looked at her screen, and saw a string of emails between her and the lawyer discussing asset protection and possible offshore accounts. That was the final nail in the coffin. I confronted her then and there, telling her I knew exactly what she was doing. Her bitchy attitude turned into outright rage. She started yelling, calling me crazy, saying I was ruining her life, that I had no right to interfere. I told her flat out that I wasn't going to let her steal everything we had. I mentioned the legal actions I was already taking: freezing her accounts, subpoenaing her emails, hiring a private investigator to track her whereabouts. She tried to spin it, claiming I was overreacting, that I was just jealous, that I didn't understand her. But I'd had enough. I told her she'd be facing a serious legal battle, and she could try to lie her way out of it, but I had enough proof. She looked like she was about to explode, her bitchy mask cracking, revealing the desperation underneath. That night, I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. I knew I was fighting a woman who had no scruples, who was willing to lie, cheat, and manipulate just to get what she wanted: our house, our inheritance, her freedom. I also knew I'd have to prepare for her next move, whatever that was. She was probably planning to leave the country, transfer more assets offshore, or come up with some new lie to cover her tracks. I had to stay vigilant. I called my lawyer again to discuss next steps, including filing for a divorce and requesting full custody of our house and inheritance. I also reached out to friends and family, telling them what was happening so I wouldn't be alone in this fight. The emotional toll was huge. I kept replaying all the moments I'd missed, all the signs I'd ignored, and how I'd trusted her for so long. It's crazy how someone you think you know can turn out to be so different, so cold and calculating. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and angry, but at the same time I was determined. I wasn't going to let her walk away with everything. I had to stand my ground, even if it meant a long, brutal legal battle. I was already planning how to protect what's mine, and I knew I couldn't back down now. Every day I woke up with a knot in my stomach, but I also woke up with a resolve. I had to fight for myself, for my future. I'd been played, yes, but I refused to be defeated. The next phase of this nightmare was about to begin, and I was ready to face whatever came next. I knew I wouldn't get her back, not after all this, but I could make sure she didn't take everything I worked for. This was war, and I was determined to win it. The legal battles dragged on for months. Lisa fought hard, trying every dirty trick she could think of, filing false accusations, claiming I was abusive, trying to sway the judge with her bitchy tears. But I had the evidence, and I had the truth on my side. My lawyer managed to get the court to freeze her accounts, prevent her from leaving the country, and even subpoena her lawyer's communications. Every day, I felt a mixture of exhaustion and relief. I knew she was desperate, and that made me more determined than ever. Eventually, everything started to unravel for her. The private investigator uncovered her secret offshore accounts, and the bank confirmed she'd transferred more money out of the country. Her lawyer tried to stall, but the court was having none of it. The judge finally ruled in my favor, awarding me full custody of the house, the inheritance, and most of the remaining savings, money that Lisa had thought she'd hidden away forever. It was a long, brutal fight. But I'd won. Not just the legal battle, but the sense that I'd taken back control of my life. Looking back, I realize how much this whole ordeal changed me. I learned that trust can be shattered in an instant, and that sometimes the people you love the most can betray you in ways you never imagined. I also learned that being prepared, documenting everything, and standing firm is crucial when facing someone determined to take everything from you. Lisa's bitchy, manipulative nature was exposed for what it truly was: desperation, greed, and a complete lack of morals. I don't regret fighting for what's mine, even if it meant uncovering a side of her I never wanted to see. The aftermath was messy. She moved out, took what she could, and left me with the house and the inheritance. I filed for divorce, and although it was painful, I knew I was better off without her. I've since rebuilt my life, focusing on my work, my family, and healing from the betrayal. I've learned to trust my instincts more and to never ignore the signs of manipulation again. The experience left scars, but it also gave me clarity and strength I didn't have before. If I could give any advice to someone in a similar situation, it's this: don't ignore your gut. Trust your instincts and don't be afraid to dig deep. People can hide their true selves for a long time, but eventually the truth comes out. Protect yourself legally, document everything, get legal advice early, and don't let anyone manipulate or gaslight you. And most importantly, don't be afraid to fight for what's rightfully yours. Betrayal cuts deep, but it also teaches you who you really are, strong enough to stand up and reclaim what's yours.